ओके, बैलेस्ट वाटर ट्रीटमेंट सिस्टम सब लोग यूज कर रहे हैं आजकल। बैलेस्ट वाटर कन्वेंशन के अंडर में D2 स्टैंडर्ड्स आ गया है। बैलेस्ट वाटर मैनेजमेंट प्लान सबका है। भी एक जो मेजर प्रॉब्लम हम लोग फेस कर रहे हैं वो ये है कि जहां पर बड़ी वाटर होता है, जब पोर्ट के अंदर पानी की जो क्वालिटी है वो सही नहीं है, तो वहां पे फिल्टर्स चोक हो रहे हैं। उसके ऊपर एक रेजोल्यूशन आया है MEPC का लेटेस्ट CWQ में, चैलेंजिंग वाटर क्वालिटी में। एक्चुअली मेरी भी काफी इसमें कम्युनिकेशन चली अपनी कंपनी के साथ, और आई ऑल्सो फेस दिस इशू इन सेवरल पोर्ट्स, चाइना में भी, इंडिया में भी। तो जो नया रेजोल्यूशन आया है CWQ का MEPC से, तो लेट्स डिस्कस टुडे अबाउट इट। और बेसिकली फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल ये समझ में आ जाना चाहिए कि दिस इज द इंटरिम गाइडेंस, दिस इज नॉट द फाइनल वर्जन। ये सिर्फ इंटरिम गाइडेंस है ऑन द एप्लीकेशन ऑफ BWM कन्वेंशंस। तो अभी इसके बाद रेजोल्यूशन चेंज भी होगा और इसके बाद नई गाइडलाइंस भी आएंगी। तो पर्पस क्या है? पर्पस समझते हैं यहाँ पर। प्राइमरी पर्पस जो है वो असिस्ट करना है शिप्स को। बेसिकली शिप्स के पास गाइडलाइंस होनी चाहिए, शिप्स के पास प्रोसीजर्स होने चाहिए कि अगर चैलेंजिंग वाटर क्वालिटी में दे आर गोइंग तो क्या करना है, हाउ दे आर एबल टू मैनेज दीज सिचुएशंस। बिकॉज देयर वाज अ केस जहां पर आई वॉज इन अ पोर्ट जहां पे आई कुड सी के पानी बहुत ज्यादा मडी है, बहुत ज्यादा खराब कंडीशन का पानी है, बट मैं वो पानी आई कैन नॉट टेक दैट वाटर इन थ्रू माय BWTS सिस्टम। तो खराब हो जाएगा, डेफिनेटली वो खराबी होना है उसने। सो नाउ आई हैव टू आई हैव टू फाइंड सम अल्टरनेटिव वे। तो उस केस में मुझे क्या करना पड़ा? आई हैड टू बाईपास द सिस्टम, आई हैड टू टेक द नॉर्मल वाटर एंड उसके बाद रिपोर्टिंग एंड ऑल वी डिड। बट दैट टाइम दिस गाइडेंस वाज नॉट देयर, MEPC का रेजोल्यूशन वाज नॉट इन फोर्स एट दैट टाइम। और उसके बाद आई हैड लॉट ऑफ कम्युनिकेशन विद द कंपनी ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस एंड ऑल, फ्लैग एंड ऑल। सो पर्पस यहाँ पे क्या है बेसिकली कि the ships should be having clear understanding, clear procedures laid out according to the company's ballast management system कि क्या आपको करना है उस केस में जब CWQ आप एनकाउंटर कर रहे हो, चैलेंजिंग वाटर क्वालिटी आप एक्सपीरियंस कर रहे हो, तो उस केस में क्या करोगे? बिकॉज यू इवेंचुअली विल हैव टू डिस्चार्ज अकॉर्डिंग टू D2 स्टैंडर्ड्स, है ना। बट जब आप ले रहे हो पानी तो वहां पे तो प्रॉब्लम ये आ रही है कि भाई आप ले नहीं पा रहे हो BWTS को चला के, एंड यू नो कि अगर मैं ये वाला BWTS चला के पानी ले लूंगा, दिस मडी वाटर विल डैमेज माय BWTS। बट स्टिल वी हैव टू कंप्लाई विद D2 स्टैंडर्ड्स बिकॉज आपका बैलेस्ट वाटर कन्वेंशन सर्टिफिकेट जो है उसमें D1 है ही नहीं, अभी D1 इज एलिमिनेटेड, ओनली D2 इज देयर। तो क्या करेंगे इसमें? तो गाइडेंस बेसिकली पहले तो हम पर्पस समझ रहे हैं। यहाँ पे पर्पस क्या है? असिस्ट शिप्स इन प्लानिंग फॉर कंप्लायंस। तो यहाँ प्लानिंग एक बड़ा वर्ड, बड़ा टर्म यूज किया है IMO ने, MEPC ने। प्लानिंग के बहुत सारे एस्पेक्ट्स हैं, उसको हम आगे भी देखेंगे। इसमें वी हैव प्रिपेयर्ड सम प्रेजेंटेशन फॉर प्लानिंग ऑल्सो कि क्या क्या हम कर सकते हैं। बट एडमिनिस्ट्रेशंस के लिए भी गाइडेंस है इस वाले रेजोल्यूशन में, इस वाले सर्कुलर में, इस वाले नोटिस में। वी हैव गाइडेंस फॉर एडमिनिस्ट्रेशंस ऑल्सो दैट एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन शुड also take steps so that ships are having proper procedures and they know what to do in case they are encountering challenging water conditions. Okay. तो बेसिक आइडिया, BWMS इज ऑपरेबल फॉर रीजंस अनरिलेटेड टू CWQ। यहां पर व्हाट इज द पर्पस ऑफ दिस resolution? This resolution is applicable for the ships which are facing condition only because BWMS, Ballast Water Management System, is now unoperational only because of the water quality, not because of the maintenance problems या spare parts problems या technical mechanical problems in your BWTS. BWTS is having any other problem XYZ, it is not coming under this resolution. This resolution only speaks about the conditions where BWTS is inoperable for reasons unrelated to CWQ. Okay. So this guidance does not address situations in which a BWMS is operable for reasons unrelated to CWQ or in which an adequate performance is due to installation, operation or maintenance. Understanding the purpose of this resolution speaks only for the situations jahan pe ships are encountering water quality problems, jahan pe you are facing challenging water situations. If you use that water through your BWTS will go kaput, or your filter sensors will give alarm, and eventually your BWTS will trip out and you won't be able to carry out your ballasting or deballasting operations. Actually ballasting operations only we talk about here. So this does not talk about the situations where you have technical or maintenance problems with your BWTS, spare parts missing or some other such related problems according to your maintenance situations. This resolution is only talking about the water quality is not good and that's why you are not able to operate your BWTS. Okay, now let's have an overview of ballast water treatment system. Very simple. Ballast water tank is here, sea chest is here, and you pass your water through the BWTS system. And so very simple, sea chest say you are taking water in your pump, you are passing it through the BWTS system here. This is the BWTS system, and then it is going to the ballast tanks. For deballasting also, this is the situation. The pump takes the water from the tank and you pass it only through the UV mode. We are talking about the UV based this thing, BWTS. We are not talking about the other ones. So and then it goes to overboard. So this is a normal layout of BWTS systems. Okay. Now challenging water quality, when we are in port, like for example China, we have a lot of mud in the water. We have many other ports also where we have, wooden breakouts, some pallets, small pieces of wood, small pieces of other, soluble materials. We can see some sheen of oil also sometimes in the water, and we are in very difficult situations. That now if we run this water through our BWTS, then our BWTS will go bad. So what is actually challenging water, and what is the definition of challenging water according to this resolution? So it refers to the ambient uptake water having quality parameters that cause a properly installed, maintained and operated type approved BWMS. So what is it? What is it saying here? That the water quality is such that it is causing a properly installed, maintained and operated type of approved BWMS to be temporarily inoperable. So this is the word which we have to focus here, and also this one, that properly installed, maintained and operated. So your BWMS, BWTS is certified, properly installed, it is operable in normal conditions, but because of this water quality now you are not able to operate your BWTS, which is properly maintained. And maintain also is the word that is used. So you are following your PMS schedules, you are maintaining it properly, you have all the spare parts correctly installed, all the sensors correctly installed, but now the water quality is as such that it is making some problem to your BWTS. Okay. However, temperature and salinity are not the parameters. This is one important point which you have to see. Temperature and salinity are not the parameters that are defined under CWQ. So you cannot say that I'm going to polar waters or I'm going to cold, sub temperature waters, or my this thing CWQ applies. No, it does not talk about salinity. Even fresh water, it does not talk about. It does not talk about temperature. Maybe low, maybe high. It doesn't talk about it. Only talks about the quality of water, where your turbidity and suspended solids in the water. So suspended solids, we have clear picture. We have a lot of situations like this. We see in many ports situations like this. Mud, very easily you can make out experienced chief officers or experienced people on board, experienced seafarers, very simply, very easily, by just looking at the water, you can make out that this water is good for my BWTS or not, whether my BWTS will be operating in normal conditions, in normal way, my sensors will be okay, my filter will not give me a problem, and my BWTS eventually will not trip. So this is a condition if you are facing, you can easily understand what is the challenging water. So this is what it is talking about, mud in the water, clearly floating solids, which will definitely choke your filter. But now how to handle the situations when you will be encountering this CWQ and challenging water quality situations. First is assessment. When you have started your BWTS, you are getting certain alarms. Your BWTS is now not performing as per the manufacturer's instructions, as per the manufacturer rated capacity. Then you will have some indications from the alarms and some sensors, definitely. So you will be able to understand that there is some problem with my BWTS due to the water quality. Then you try to troubleshoot. Troubleshoot is what? Check your valves, address alarms, clean, black backflush, increase intensity, slow the flow. So valves, alarms, clean your filter if possible. Reagents, backflush. Reagents is in your chlorine type, this thing, and slow the flow. So you can restrict the flow also. Then, if iske baad bhi your CWQ is making some problem, then you will be sure that something is now problem with my water, what I am passing through the BWTS, and it is not accepting the water. Now you have to consult BWTS self-monitoring system and monitor the flow rate. Okay. Uske baad, alternatives to bypass. Let's consider what are the alternatives we are having to bypass the system. We can restrict the flow to operational demand. Now, what is the operational demand? Operational demand is the minimum flow of water that can keep the BWTS in running condition in operation without any alarms. Optimize BWMS for CWQ. This is what we just talked about. And whatever possible, you can reduce the amount of ballast that you have planned. Let's say you have planned 10,000 tons of ballast, meter cube of ballast. If your this problem is existing, you can try and evaluate if you take some less amount of ballast, if it is okay for your vessel. That is another alternative. Okay. If all these things are done, you have to bypass eventually. Then you bypass. Consider partial BWMS. Minimum safe amount of ballast you can take. Decontamination is now another problem. When you have taken the ballast water without treatment, now you have to go to another port. Now, in fact, you are not complying with your D2 standards. So to comply with your D2 standards, you have to get rid of that water. You have to decontaminate your tanks, your line, and then you have to proceed further. So after bypass, when you have taken the water, you have to decontaminate, conduct exchange in open sea, of course. Flushing and treatment will be another technique, and mid-ocean, of course, because once you are out from the port limits, you can go into the mid-ocean. You can discharge your water, whatever you have taken from the by passing the system, and then you can take a fresh seawater without any alarm. So now D2 standards will be in operation. Then record keeping and communication is one of the very important part of this thing. BWRB, so record book entries are very important, and in the pre-arrival reporting form, whenever you are going to any port, in your destination port, you will be reporting that this was the situation we have bypassed, and we were not complying with D2 standards. Now we have done so and so measures, we have taken decontamination, and for this we had exchanged the water, flushed our tanks, whatever you have done to comply with D2 standards. So all these things you will have to carry out. Now, what is operational demand? We saw here in this one, we saw operational demand, operational limitations and operational demands to establish CWQ. So we have to assess operational limitations and operational demands to make sure that now this CWQ is triggering the problem. So when we are having this type of situation, these two words will be very important to understand: operational limitation and operational demands. So what is operational demands? Minimum BWMS flow rate that can be achieved without triggering any alarm. So if you are encountering CWQ situation, you try to reduce the flow of water, intake water, and try to minimize the flow so that there is no alarm in the BWTS. And by doing this, your tanks are being filled up, whatever quantity you need, whatever quantity you have evaluated. These alarms are not existing and your BWTS is working fine. Your D2 standards are being complied with. So it will permit the ship to continue cargo operations. So this is what we are talking about, the minimum BWMS flow rate, how we conduct, how we evaluate this. Permit the ship to continue cargo operations while using the BWMS, which should be no greater than 50% of the BWMS treatment rated capacity. So 50% ka yahan pe we have a cap that it should not be greater than 50% of the treatment rated capacity, TRC. Okay. So manufacturer has given you the maximum rated capacity of the system. Now you bring it down to 50% of that, and it should not be greater than that. So these things will be included in your BWMS. Your Ballast Water Management Plan also will be including all these things. So whenever you are declaring that CWQ is the problem for me, you will have to identify the 50% of the rated capacity. Then you have to evaluate that my BWMS, my BWTS is working with this rated capacity or not. Then only you can define the operational demand. So this is the definition of operational demand according to this. And now comes to operational limitation. Now this is a automatic shutdown of BWMS. So limitation. Now this CWQ, the bad water, the muddy water, the problematic water is causing some issue with my BWTS, some limitation it is giving to my BWTS and it is not allowing the system to work. So how I will evaluate that? So a critical alarm for which the BWMS directs a manual shutdown. So there is an alarm. Now a lot of mud has come in, the filter is choked, the sensors have given way. There will be definitely some alarm in your BWTS. BWTS monitoring systems will give you certain alarms, and it will require your BWTS to stop. So you will manually have to stop, or it will trip by itself because the water flow has reduced to a level where BWTS cannot function. Now all the sensors are giving alarm, so your BWTS will eventually trip, but it requires manual stop. So that is what your manual limitation says. Or a safety related circumstance that requires a shutdown of BWMS for the production of BWMS equipment. So this is what is talking about the trip of BWMS. Okay, if you do not shut it manually, then it will stop just to protect the sensors and equipment. Okay. Now operational limitation is something which we will have to record properly, so that when a PSC or a Coast Guard or somebody is coming to ask us, okay, why you bypassed or why you took these CWQ measures, you should be able to prove that my operational limitation was, CWQ limitation was triggering alarm and the BWTS was not being operated. We were not able to run the BWTS in the normal manner, and that's why we had to bypass. So this definition holds a very high importance in these things. Also the operational demand. Now the question from the authorities will be or the port state will be, were you meeting the operational demand or not? Yes. So if you were not meeting the operational demand, that you have to bypass. Another one is operational limitation. Did you work out the operational limitation? Yes. According to this, we did it. Now, what are the guidance for ships operating in CWQ? So this is few points which are listed in the resolution itself. Okay. So troubleshooting and mitigation. CWQ triggers, alternatives to bypass, bypass procedures, decontamination, communication, record keeping. Okay. So troubleshooting you will do when your BWTS will give you some alarms. You will check all your alarms, you will check all your sensors, you will check all your valves, you will check the filter, everything is intact, everything is working fine. Now, why, there will be a question why it is giving alarm. So you will go to the water condition. Is the water condition giving me alarm? Is the water condition triggering these alarms? Yes. Then you have to see what are the alternatives you have. You cannot go to bypass directly. You have to work out the alternatives first. So work out on the alternatives first. Then you see what are the alternatives. We just talked about alternatives are you can reduce the amount of ballast water that you need. You can reduce the flow of the ballast water according to your operational demands, which we just saw. You can try and avoid the complete ballasting operation if possible, if your cargo operations and your operational limitations are not there. Then if not, then you have to bypass. So go to the bypass procedure. But after bypassing, when you have taken the water which is now dirty, which is not as per D2 standards, you have to decontaminate. Then you have to communicate these things to the next port, your flag state. Certain authorities will come to that, and your record keeping that you have done and carried out all these things. Record keeping is not only for that time. Even though after you have signed off, there might be some investigation after 6 months, after 8 months, and record keeping will be a very important thing that will protect the vessel, the owners, and also the seafarer who was responsible for the operation. Okay, now guidance for ships operating in CWQ. So they are talking about pre-planning also here. So what pre-planning you can do who are operating in CWQ. Now, first of all, pre-planning is important. Vessels who are calling the same ports which are having this problem of water, CWQ problems, they are aware that we are going on such and so port, and we will definitely be encountering some problem related to the water quality. So because of this reason, we will have to amend our ballast water plan in advance. After this resolution, of course, every ship will do that, and we have to maintain a 50% of the treatment rated capacity of the BWMS figure into that. We have to incorporate that 50% of the rated capacity. We should know that our system is working on 50% rated capacity, then it is okay. So operational demand will come into the picture here. Operational demand based on paragraph 17 that identifies the sustained flow rate. Now, this flow rate should not be higher than 50% of the. So 50% of the treatment rated capacity is the figure which we should be having readily available with us. If CWQ triggers, we should be able to check that whether our system, whether our treatment system is operating in 50 or at 50% rate or no. Okay. BWMS must include maintenance. So maintenance is a very prime aspect here. If the vessel is following all the maintenance schedule, all the PMS schedules, all spares are being replaced on time, manufacturers guidance are being followed, all the checklists, all the maintenance, all the services are being done on time. This is one thing that you have to maintain, so that you can prove that the alarm, the problem, the functionality, the operational limitation was due to the CWQ and not because of my equipment, because your equipment is only working properly till the time you are maintaining it in the correct order as per the manufacturer's instructions. Then you have to assess. Assessment also must be included in your BWMP. Indications that the BWMS is not performing at its expected treatment rated capacity. So you have to include the assessment process, the assessment procedure, what we talked about, operational demand and operational limitation. You have to include these figures into your BWMP, so that whenever such situations are there, you should be able to assess it very easily. Then troubleshooting and mitigation should also be included in your management plan. How to identify the problem, how to resolve some challenging situations, these all things will be there. After that comes the CWQ. So before CWQ declaration, before you can declare that CWQ is a problem, you have to go through all these situations. You have to troubleshoot all according to your management plan. So BWMP must include CWQ triggers also. In case troubleshooting and mitigation is unsuccessful, a table of critical alarms is specific to BWMS. So what alarms you will get if water quality is not good, that has to be identified in your ballast water management plan. Now, whenever you are encountering CWQ situations, you have to check what alarms you are getting, and if these alarms are the same which are identified in CWQ triggers, then you can actually prove that, yeah, of course, this is a water quality problem and not my system. Alternatives to bypass also must be identified. That depends upon the operation of the vessel, the port, the cargo, the distribution of cargo, the stability of the vessel, how much ballast you need, how much you can minimize, if ballasting operation completely can be avoided. All these things are. So these all basically comes under pre-planning actions, consideration and procedures. So if you are aware that I'm going into a port where we'll be having some CWQ triggers, you can adjust your ballast. You have the cargo plan in advance. You can adjust your ballast well in advance, just before the port limits, where your CWQ is not a problem. Then bypass procedures also must be identified, which all valves you need to open, operate, and how the bypass system will work. Then decontamination, specific procedures for decontaminating the pipe, the tanks, whatever water you have taken without D2 compliance, that water has to be pumped out, and the new water with D2 compliance has to be taken after your vessel departs the port. The communication is another very important aspect. Procedure for informing the port state that will receive any ballast water discharge. So whenever you are destined to any port, you have to inform the port state of what to do before bypassing the BWMS, what to do before we bypass the system. Before bypassing the BWTS, we have to undergo some troubleshooting, of course, and we should be able to identify that these alarms, these triggers are not because of unfamiliarity of my officers, of my crew, of the ship staff. Is the equipment correctly maintained? Is it operating in as per the manufacturer defined instructions? Is there any problem with the experience of the crew? Is the crew not able to open correct valves, or all the valves and sensors are working correctly? Basically, the maintenance part is very important. If you are maintaining your BWTS in as per the line of manufacturers, then you are able to say that my BMS is well maintained, my maintenance is well done, and my equipment is working in correct order in normal circumstances. This might be a case of bad water. Okay. Then troubleshooting. BWMP have it followed in troubleshooting the operation of the BWMS, verifying that the BWMS has been properly maintained. So this again comes with the troubleshooting, where if your system is giving alarm, you have to check all your valves, all your sensors, all your equipment lines. If everything is okay, then only you can go to the next step. So troubleshooting is one of the very important aspect here, and troubleshooting can only be done by the people who are well familiar with the equipment and who are well versed with the manufacturer instructions. Before bypassing, again, you can follow some alternatives to bypass. One of this is restricting the flow to the minimum level consistent, and limiting the flow will depend upon many conditions and many circumstances and many things you will have to consider before deciding that whether you are able to limit. Now the maximum rated capacity of the equipment is also defined by the manufacturer. Now the minimum operational capacity can be 50% of the maximum TRC. So if your equipment is working on 50%, then your sensors will be okay, but you have to restrict the flow of the water coming in. Okay, so again, another point will be if your cargo operations are allowing that rate of ballasting. If your cargo operations are fast, maybe on bulk carriers or some tankers, you won't be able to compensate with the minimum amount of rate. Then whether you can minimize your ballast water intake is another option that you can consider, even though sometimes people try to avoid complete ballasting operation. So all these things you can basically consider. Now bypass procedure, if you have worked out all the alternatives, then you will definitely going to the bypass procedure, and bypass procedure will definitely come with some cons. You will be having some additional jobs to do, additional workload will be there. Now to minimize all these things, there are guidelines laid out in this resolution, and it says that you can limit the number of ballast tanks you can evaluate. Like for example, you are evaluating the minimum amount of ballast water that you can compensate with, that the operations can go on and your vessel can safely depart from the port. So now you can work out on the minimum number of ballast tanks that you will use with bypassing the BWTS. Now only these tanks will be having non-compliant water, and when you will go outside on an open sea, you can easily flush these tanks, so your workload will also decrease. And in declaration purposes also, this thing will help, that this is the only tank that is having your non-compliant water. Then treating the greatest possible fraction of the uptake water. So you do not need to bypass for complete operation. Maybe so you do not need to bypass the complete fraction, the complete entire situation, the entire amount of water you do not need to bypass. Maybe you can bypass, let's say if the complete operation was for 10 hours, you can just bypass for 2 hours if the situation allows. If the alarms are not triggering for 8 hours, or maybe let's say 6 hours, the alarm triggered after some time of the ballasting operation you have started, then at that time you can stop the BWTS, you can bypass whatever fraction of water you can avoid without D2 standards, you can try to avoid that. So this is one thing. Then bypass procedures, again, remainder of the treatment process to the uptake water. So where BWMS treatment process is inoperable, consideration should be given that you take the minimum amount of water that is not treated, and the maximum amount of water whatever you can take with the D2 standards compliant, you have to evaluate that. Only the minimum safe volume of ballast water should be taken. Very simple to understand, I just talked about this. Then decontamination. If the decontamination is done, if you have bypassed the system and you have taken in the water without D2 compliance, then still the ship is responsible for a D2 compliance. So once you go out of the port, you have certain measures that you can take, and you can pump out the water, you can flush out the water, you can flush out the tanks, your pipelines, and you can take the new water in, and your water will be D2 compliant. So before proceeding to any port, before you arrive at the destination port, all the water that you have on your ship should be D2 compliant. Okay, communication is another important aspect here. So this resolution lists that the next port state, the next port, the destination port should be aware, you should inform, you should communicate that this was the situation, we bypassed the system in so and so port, so and so date, this tank was used for taking the bypassed water that was not compliant. So the reporting should be done, the communication should be done to the next port, and the affected ballast tank should be declared. Any deviation that was done or should also be reported. Record keeping. Now, record keeping is a very important aspect in maritime industry. Without record keeping, now nothing is working. So we have few things that we have to record for such operations, such non-compliance with D2 standards. The reason why normal ballasting operations were stopped is the first thing. What was the reason why we stopped? In this one, it comes again with the operational demands and operational limitations. We have to prove that the operational demands were not being met. We were facing operational limitations, and that's why we have to bypass the system. So then again, any steps that you have taken, the troubleshooting, the alternative measures, did you work out, what all things you worked out before you bypass the system? So all these things you have to mention. All these things will be already there in your BWMP, so you have to go according to your management plan. Operational demands, were they met or not? If they were not met, then what were the operational limitations you were encountering? If your operational demands were being met, then why you bypass? So all these things should be recorded. So whenever you are bypassing the system, your operational demand were not being met, it should be recorded, and your operational limitations that you encountered will also be recorded. What were the steps that were taken before bypassing the system? The troubleshooting, the alternative measures, did you work it out? So all these things will be asked. The tanks that have received the non-compliant water will be recorded, will be logged in the logbook. Date, time, location, when it took place will also be recorded. Decontamination steps that were taken to recover. So once you have bypassed the system, your vessel is out of the port limits, what you did for decontamination, and before arriving the next port, or how many days later you did all these decontamination must also be recorded. So there are some flowcharts now. What are the flowcharts talking about? The problem now, how to go for the CWQ process. Is my situation eligible for going to CWQ process or no? Let's see how it goes. So if you are in a port, you need to start ballasting operations. You have started your BWMS, then you see is it working as per expected. If it is working, then you continue normal operations, you continue normal ballasting. If no, then you check your troubleshooting, you check your manufacturer's manual. If it is all okay, then consult the manufacturer. If any alarms are still there, you log the alarms, the shutdowns, and you can then proceed to the challenging water quality process. If your technical problem, some problem is there, you cannot work with your BWTMS critical alarm, and you cannot find out does BWMS indicate a critical alarm as detailed in the system operation, then no, consult operations for troubleshooting and mitigations. Is BWTS? So now you have to basically come to the operational limitation and operational demand definitions again. If your BWTS is able to operate on the minimum operational demand rate, then you should be able to continue your ballasting operations as per D2 standards. If no, then you can proceed to the challenging water quality. So you cannot just go direct from here to here. You need to follow this process. This complete process is supposed to be followed. Now then comes the challenging water quality process. So what is the process for challenging water quality, and what all things to consider before going to bypass and before going to the alternatives to bypass, in fact. So let's see. So determine the reason for BWMS, why it is shutting down, why you have critical alarms, do you have any mechanical failures, electrical failures, are all the valves okay, your power, your mode is proper, your USCG, OpenC, your local mode, whatever, your maintenance is complete, your manufacturer your manufacturer manual is giving whatever troubleshooting process. Have you done everything that is listed out in your manufacturer manuals? If you have done everything, then you are still encountering the problem, you proceed to the alternative to the bypass. But if all these things are no, then you consult your operations manual. So the challenging water quality resolution, MEPC resolution, is a way that we can understand that how to deal with the situations where we are encountering CWQ situations, and it is one very good thing for the seafarers. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. you got the points that I was trying to explain. And if any doubts, if anything you want to discuss more, you can comment below this video. I can definitely try and make another explanatory video on that. I wish you guys good luck. Bye bye, and we'll see you again next time.